Hello everyone, this is Aaron Davis here, and I'm doing this for our first discussion post on the web. And I sort of want to break this discussion post into three simple questions, just like the three questions we were asked, but it goes question by question, and so we can easily follow it. So the first question that I want to be discussing is: reflect upon the history of the web in a personal manner. Did you visit any of the now defunct and once popular sites? And to sort of set the tone for what the web first meant for me in a personal manner, I want to first tell you guys a story. So around 10 years ago, I would have been 10 years old, and I remember I was sort of getting into the web and getting used to sort of what it was, and I was sitting with my mom, and we were looking for a toy weapon. Because at that point in time, I loved toy weapons. I loved the Nerf guns, I loved toy lightsabers, I loved essentially like toy knives, toy guns, I loved everything as far as weapons were concerned. And I really wanted this King Arthur toy sword. And so I asked my mom, because we couldn't find it. So I asked her, "Mom, can't you just type in King Arthur toy sword for $10, and won't the internet and won't the web automatically spew out exactly what I want? Won't we be able to find it?" And she said, "Aaron, it just doesn't work quite like that. You can't just type in whatever you want and you automatically get it." And so at that point in time, I realized, okay, the web's not that amazing. But since then, I think that the web sort of has developed, and while you can't simply just type King Arthur toy sword for $10, the web won't automatically spew it out if it doesn't exist. But if something does exist, what you type in, you're going to get a pretty accurate result. And so that's sort of my first experience sort of with the web. But today, you really do get pretty accurate results. And it's amazing how far the web has come since it started. And now, in regards to did I visit any of the now defunct and once popular sites, I can remember when I was really young, around the age I was with my mom, and I remember first experiencing MySpace. I don't know if you guys are still on MySpace or if you remember MySpace. I'm assuming you do. But it was just one of the first social media websites that really took off. And it came out around 2005, and from 2005 to 2009, it was super popular. But I remember in 2005, 2006, being around my cousin, and I remember two things. First off, I was like dumbfounded by the fact that you could instant message someone, like one of your friends, and they can immediately get back to you. At that point in time, I wasn't really familiar with texting. Texting wasn't too popular like it is today. And so I was like, wow, you can literally type in something and your friend can see it and then respond back. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And then there's a second experience I had though, and that was, and I was a little naive at the time, but that was MySpace, where you put all your personal information out. That must be like a big, bad place where anyone who wants to do anything can see your information and do anything to you. And so me and my naivety and being so young sort of shied away from it. I thought, okay, that's for older people and that's not good. But then I remember when I got a little older and Facebook at that point in time sort of took over MySpace and how popular it became. It took over MySpace in 2009, because from 2005 to 2009 MySpace was the most popular. But then Facebook took over. And there were a lot of switches from MySpace to Facebook, but one of the switches was that MySpace had people use pseudonyms, but Facebook allowed people to use their real names. And at that point in time, people got more comfortable sharing more personal information, and they realized, okay, things aren't nearly as bad as we think, as far as we can be a little more trusting and things like that. But oddly enough, me, who at first was concerned about MySpace, was totally fine with Facebook, even though it was getting out a little bit more personal information. And I remember how excited I felt when I got my first Facebook account. However, my father told me, be careful about how much personal information you put out there, and only make sure your friends and your family members, but only people that you're friends with on Facebook can see your wallet and see your personal information. And so this was sort of what was happening as I was experiencing my own personal experience with the web and personal history of the websites like MySpace and then Facebook. And I did not visit MySpace, but I was comfortable with it. And now it's not defunct, so to say, but not nearly as many people are on it. I mean, you hear people talk about Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, but how many times do you hear people talk about, did you see that recent post on MySpace? It just doesn't happen today. Another interesting website, which we all know and we all love, is YouTube. Now, interestingly enough, this came out just around the time that Facebook and MySpace came out, and that was around 2005, 2004, 2006 mark. And the first video ever that came out on YouTube around 2005 was by the co-founder of Him at the Zoo. And since then, there's been millions of videos on this most visited social media video sharing website. And only 10 years ago, it was something that was just being started. It was just this new idea of being able to share videos with other people and to get those videos out there to the public, to your friends, and even to people you don't even know, and sort of a way to share information and accessibility to that information. Since then, though, it's literally taken off as, like I said, the most visited social media website. And then I have one other website that I want to talk about here, and the history of the web, my experience with the web and things like that, would be Wikipedia. Now, later on, I know we're going to be talking about actually writing a post or some information on Wikipedia. And I remember growing up, especially when I was younger, and then when I first entered high school, I always remembered you cannot use Wikipedia as a resource. People always were telling me that in research papers. And while that certainly is still true, it was even more true back then. But now, even though we can't use Wikipedia as a resource, it's one of those things where you can rely on the sources that are found on Wikipedia and sort of use Wikipedia as a gateway into those sources. Because Wikipedia has a lot of valuable information, and so if you click the references and the sources that are next to a certain sentence in Wikipedia, well, then you can find really good, reliable information. And so that's a way that Wikipedia has developed over the years. And so through these examples of MySpace, Facebook, YouTube, Wikipedia, they're showing the increased usability and the interaction and the information that's come from the web really in the last 10 years. Especially that's been the 10 years that I've really experienced the personal web in my lifetime. So the second question now I want to start to talk about is reflect on these websites and why do some of these websites succeed and others fail. And I sort of touched on this when I was talking about MySpace, but here I want to quote Connie Chan, who was an analyst with Chess Media Group, and she told the HuffPost this. She said, MySpace was created by people in the entertainment industry, not by technology gurus. Therefore, they could not innovate at the pace that they needed to compete. So we see that MySpace from about 2005 to 2009 really launched the platform for social media and sharing social media and getting your information out there with people. However, because they were in an entertainment industry and not a technology industry, they really couldn't keep up with the pace that Facebook was moving at and the adaptation that needed to take place. So while essentially YouTube and Facebook sort of, and Twitter and Instagram sort of stand on the shoulders of MySpace, MySpace provided the platform for their success, MySpace wasn't able to keep up. Also, you have this thing of user friendliness and branding. For some reason today, Facebook stands out so much more than MySpace. And to a measure, I think it is because of branding. And I want to use maybe a silly example to some, but I think it's still a good example, is the example of like a McDonald's versus a Burger King, or a McDonald's versus Dairy Queen or something like that. Now, everybody, for some reason, seems to know about McDonald's. It's not necessarily the best fast food place. It's not necessarily the place that's most clean or has the best food, but for some reason, people all know about McDonald's. And whether it's McDonald's or Burger King, people would probably choose McDonald's. And I think it's because of people know about McDonald's because of its branding. There's so many McDonald's around, and it just gets out there. And that might be also part of a reason that Facebook was able to get out there. Once you have to first consider the major issues of adaptation and innovation and user friendliness that Facebook has perhaps over MySpace, but you also have to look at some of those other things. People just are more familiar with it. So now I'd like to reflect upon the last question, and this is reflect upon the rise of social media networks. How does this changing American landscape affect marketing from a business perspective and from the user's perspective? Be sure to support your responses with evidence. So let's talk about the business perspective first. In today's age, marketing relies heavily upon web-centered business and upon app-centered business. I mean, like with these websites that we've been talking about, the social media websites, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and then social media or really video sharing website, YouTube. These are so many ways to get the word out to more people than just the people that you know. You can essentially get it out to the world. to millions of people. And websites in today's world are scored or ranked really on their coherency, on their accessibility, on their quality, on how easy they are to navigate. I mean, I don't think we can imagine today a successful business that doesn't have a website. And we couldn't imagine really a successful business that doesn't have a successful website that's user-friendly. A lot of times people can access the website, and that gives a viewpoint into the business. And if the business website is not clear, it's not coherent, it's not visually stunning and gripping, it doesn't have good information on it, well then a lot of times that is not going to be a good marketing aspect to the people and to the populace, and they're not really going to want to pursue that business website. And so that's sort of from the business perspective. But then from the user's perspective, it's so important as well because it needs to be easy for them. It needs to be something that they can get right away, that's visually gripping, that draws them in immediately into further marketing where they can go ahead and look further into the business opportunities. Websites are literally a mechanism or a medium for reaching millions of people. And one personal example of then how apps are so important to business is I can use a personal example. Of course, we know all of the apps that are on websites from like video game businesses, but also I play the guitar and I use this thing called a metronome that keeps you keep in tune and right at this not in tune but really at the right pace. And that's from a music standpoint, but it's an app. And there's so many apps from businesses, but an example is I work for an insurance company, State Farm Insurance, and it's a really, really good company, and I work in the call center selling insurance. And one of the discounts that we can offer people is a mobile app called Drive Safe and Save. And essentially, people that have a smartphone, they can download this app, and essentially just tracks their miles to make sure that they're staying below 1,600 miles a year. Oh, sorry, that'd be a little, 16,000 miles a year. And as long as they're beneath 16,000 miles, they get a discount on their auto insurance. Now this is an app that's playing in not necessarily only to the marketing, but also to the business of State Farm Insurance Company. And it's being able to track someone's driving to help make sure that they could get this discount. And if we didn't have this app, there'd essentially be no way to do that. So that's just one way that this app area falls into business. And so in conclusion, I think we can see that there's been a lot of evolution, at least just for me, over the last 10 years, from MySpace to Facebook, and really something that we can see also as well in how MySpace necessarily wasn't able to keep up. Some websites weren't able to keep up. They're now called the now defunct websites because they didn't continue to adapt and didn't continue to be user-friendly. And then finally we see how it's important to have user-friendly websites in the business marketing world, because websites, media websites, social media sharing websites are those things that really get mass information out to a mass amount of people in an easy way.